ready to hit the streets, huh? Get your voice heard.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. It's so important.
Yeah.
We're diving deep today into this guide that you sent me.
Yeah.
About, lawful protesting in the U.S.
Yeah.
Just to make sure you're prepped with the knowledge to be effective and responsible.
Great.
And really, this isn't just about knowing your rights.
Yeah.
It's about understanding those lines you absolutely can't cross.
Yes.
And those surprising gray areas that you might not even be thinking about.
Right.
Like, did you know that the police can't always demand to see your ID?
That's a tricky one. It depends.
Or that bringing your allergy meds could cause more trouble than you expect.
Yeah, if they're not in the right container.
Yeah.
With a prescription.
We're going to unpack all of that and more today.
Sounds good.
This guide stresses the importance of the First Amendment.
Yes.
But also that, it's not a blank check to just do whatever you want.
Right, right.
It seems like a lot of well-intentioned people end up in trouble because they don't understand those limits.
Yes, yes.
So let's start there. What does it actually mean to protest peacefully under the law?
Well,
and when does it cross the line?
Well, the First Amendment does protect your right to peacefully assemble, to speak your mind.
Right.
And petition the government.
Right. But it's not a free-for-all.
No, it's not a free-for-all. There are limits to it.
Right.
It's about understanding where that protection ends.
Right.
And so, for example, violence.
Right.
Or inciting others to violence is a hard no-go. It's also important to remember that trespassing on private property, even during a protest, can get you arrested.
Oh, I see. So you're saying, like, if the protest itself is legal,
right, but
you step onto the lawn of a business or something,
exactly,
you could still be
that's right
arrested.
You could be arrested for trespassing.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I think a lot of people assume, like,
right,
if the protest is sanctioned,
right,
it's all good.
Yeah, that's a common misconception. That's where those time, place, and manner restrictions come into play.
The ones you were talking about.
Yeah. Cities can set rules about noise levels, protest hours, even where you can gather.
I see.
And these have to be followed.
Right. So it's not just about knowing your general rights, but also knowing the specific local laws.
Local rules, yeah.
For the town you're in.
That's right. The key is knowing those rules in advance because they can vary from city to city.
So you got to do your research. What about permits? Does every protest need a permit?
Not necessarily. If it's a small, spontaneous gathering, you're usually good to go. But if you're planning to, say, shut down a street or have a huge rally or use amplified sound, then yes, a permit's often required.
Yeah.
And ignoring those requirements can turn a peaceful demonstration into an unlawful assembly faster than you can chant a slogan.
Wow. That leads me to unlawful assembly.
Yeah.
What exactly triggers that declaration?
Yeah.
What should you do if that happens? Because I feel like that's,
it can
an intimidating thing.
Yes. If the police decide a protest is no longer peaceful or if it poses a risk to public safety, they can declare it an unlawful assembly.
I see.
They'll usually use a loudspeaker to issue a dispersal order, giving people a chance to leave.
Okay.
The important thing is to listen to those orders and comply.
Right.
Trying to argue your point or stand your ground at that moment isn't going to help.
So knowing when to stand your ground and when to strategically retreat.
Exactly.
Let's say you're at a protest that has been declared an unlawful assembly.
Right.
And there's a group of people that are refusing to disperse.
Right.
Could you still get arrested if you're just there but you're not actively...
That's where things get tricky. Participating.
Even if you're not the one breaking windows or spray painting slogans, simply being present at an unlawful assembly after a dispersal order has been given can get you arrested.
Oh, wow.
It's like that old saying, you are the company you keep.
Right.
So if things start to escalate, trust your gut and remove yourself from the situation.
Right.
You can always continue advocating for your cause in other safer ways.
Okay. So let's say you're at a protest. You're following all the rules. You're on public property. You're not blocking anything. And suddenly you're approached by a police officer.
Right.
What should you do?
First and foremost, stay calm and don't make any sudden movements. Keep your hands visible. Be polite. And remember that you have rights. One of the most important things you can do is ask a simple question. Am I free to go?
Oh, okay.
If the officer says yes, walk away calmly.
Great.
If they say no or don't give a clear answer, you're being detained.
Okay.
That's when knowing your rights becomes even more crucial. Wow. I think a lot of people, especially first-time protesters, would feel intimidated in that moment.
Right.
And just automatically assume they have to answer any questions an officer asks.
You absolutely have the right to remain silent and ask for a lawyer. And remember, even if you choose to answer questions, be mindful of what you say.
Right.
Police can and do use your words against you.
Right.
So less is more in those situations.
What about recording the police? Is that legal? Are there any guidelines?
You absolutely have the right to record police activity in public spaces. In fact, it's an important way to document potential misconduct and protect yourself and others.
Right.
But there are some guidelines to keep in mind.
Like what? It seems like there's a fine line between documenting and interfering.
Maintain a safe distance, don't obstruct their movements, and avoid being confrontational or interfering with their work. And never, ever point your camera in an officer's face.
Yeah.
It's about documenting, not escalating.
Right.
Also, remember that police interactions can be stressful and your adrenaline might be pumping. Try to remain calm and avoid making any sudden movements that could be misconstrued as a threat.
Right. So being assertive about your right to record, but also respectful.
Exactly. And remember, if you're ever unsure about your rights or what to do in a specific situation, don't hesitate to reach out to a legal support organization like the National Lawyers Guild.
Okay, great advice. Let's shift gears and talk about something a little bit more practical. What you should actually wear and bring to a protest.
Yeah, the guide has a whole section on it.
Yeah. And some of the recommendations are pretty interesting.
It's not just about comfort.
Right.
It's about safety. And surprisingly, anonymity in this digital age.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Let's start with the clothing. What's the number one rule?
Think of it this way. You're dressing for a potential emergency, not a fashion show.
Okay.
So long sleeves, long pants, sturdy, closed-toe shoes are essential.
Right.
Layers are key so you can adapt to changing weather, or if you need to shed clothing quickly to avoid being identified later.
Right.
You know?
Practicality over style, for
Yeah.
sure. What about colors and patterns? Should we all be going for the inconspicuous protester look?
Well, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Plain, nondescript clothing without logos or distinctive patterns is generally recommended.
Okay.
It helps you blend in with the crowd and avoid standing out in surveillance footage, which is increasingly important in this age of facial recognition and video analysis.
Okay. So no band tees.
Probably not a good idea.
What else should we consider?
Think about things that could be grabbed or used against you.
Right.
Secure your hair, avoid dangling jewelry, and ditch the contact lenses.
Ditch the contacts. Seriously.
Yeah, seriously. If tear gas or pepper spray is used, contacts can trap those chemicals and cause serious eye damage.
Wow.
Stick with glasses, and if you can, add a strap to keep them secure.
I would never have thought of that. Now, masks and goggles. I'm assuming those are pretty high on the list of must-haves.
Absolutely essential.
Yeah.
A high-quality face mask or respirator can protect you from tear gas, pepper spray, and even help to obscure your face from surveillance.
Right.
And a good pair of goggles, either swim goggles or those shatter-resistant safety goggles. They're crucial for protecting your eyes from irritants, projectiles, and even lasers that are sometimes used
wow.
by counter-protesters or unruly crowds.
It seems like protests require a whole different level of preparedness than your average outing.
That's right.
So what about the rest of our gear? What should we be packing in our protest bag?
Think of it as your essential protest survival kit.
Okay.
Water is non-negotiable, not only for hydration, which is crucial if you're out there for hours,
Right.
but also for rinsing your eyes or wounds if you come into contact with pepper spray or tear gas.
I've also heard that milk is good for rinsing pepper spray. Should we be packing that too?
Actually, that's a common myth. Milk isn't sterile, and it can actually increase the risk of infection if used on irritated eyes or skin.
Really?
Yeah. Stick to water or saline solution. And bring some high-energy snacks as well. Protests can last for hours, and you need to keep your energy up.
Right. It's basically like preparing for a hike, but with the added possibility of
Exactly.
encountering tear gas and riot police.
Yeah.
What about first aid kit?
Absolutely. A basic first aid kit with Band-Aids, gauze, antiseptic wipes, and any personal medications you absolutely need is crucial. But there's a catch with medications. If you're carrying prescription meds, make sure they're in the original container with your name on it. Otherwise, if you're searched,
Right.
it could create a whole legal mess.
Okay. What about identification and cash?
Yeah.
Because this guide seems a little conflicted on whether or not you should bring an ID.
It's a tough call, and it really depends on your individual circumstances. Carrying an ID can be helpful if you get arrested, as not having it could lead to a longer detention. But if you have concerns about privacy,
Right.
immigration status, or simply don't want to risk your ID being lost or stolen,
Yeah.
you might choose to leave it at home.
So it's personal, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's weighing the pros and cons. What about cash?
Bringing a small amount of cash in small bills is a good idea.
Okay.
ATMs might be down during a protest.
Right.
And having cash on hand allows you to buy food, water, or transportation if needed.
Okay.
And it doesn't create a digital trail linking you to purchases.
Right.
However, leave your credit cards and anything else with personal information at home. You don't want to risk losing sensitive information if your belongings get lost or confiscated.
Now let's talk about our phones. They're obviously essential for communication and documenting what's happening.
Yeah.
But they also come with privacy risks, right?
Yes.
This guide has a whole section on phone security during protests. What are some of the key takeaways?
Let's just put it this way. Your phone is a double-edged sword at a protest. It can be your lifeline and your biggest liability.
Okay. So how do we balance those two?
First, lock it down like Fort Knox. Strong passwords, disable fingerprint and face unlock, because you don't want to be forced to unlock it.
Right.
You can even go a step further and turn off location services unless you're actively using them for navigation.
So be strategic about when and how you're using your phone.
Exactly.
What about apps?
Yeah. Consider using secure messaging apps like Signal, which offer end-to-end encryption. And if you think you might be in an area with limited cell service or internet access, have offline messaging apps ready that work via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi direct.
Okay.
Think of it as your backup communication plan.
So we're being proactive and thinking about those worst case scenarios. What about things we should definitely not bring to a protest?
This might seem obvious, but I can't stress it enough. No weapons.
Right.
Leave anything that could be perceived as a weapon at home. No knives, tools, pepper spray, nothing. And this also includes things that might seem innocent but could be misconstrued, like a heavy-duty flashlight or even a multi-tool.
Right. So if it could cause harm or be misinterpreted.
Exactly. Leave it at home.
And on that note, avoid bringing valuables or anything with sensitive information on it. You don't want to risk losing precious items or having personal data compromised.
Yeah. Right.
Now let's dive into something that can be a little more unsettling.
Yeah.
Situational awareness and safety.
Yeah.
During the protest itself, protests can be unpredictable and things can change in an instant.
That's right.
What are some essential tips for staying safe in those dynamic environments?
It's about developing a sort of safety radar, if you will.
Okay.
And being able to read the room.
So what are some of the signals we should be paying attention to?
First and foremost, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to remove yourself from a situation that seems unsafe. And always have a buddy system in place. Go with at least one friend.
Right.
And agree on a meeting point in case you get separated. It's much safer to navigate a protest with a friend than alone.
That's a good point. Safety in numbers. What about specific police tactics that we should be aware of? This guide mentions something called kettling, which sounds kind of terrifying.
Kettling is a crowd control tactic that has unfortunately become more common in recent years. It's basically when police form lines or circles to trap protesters in a confined area,
Right.
often with the goal of making mass arrests.
So if you see yourself getting boxed in by police lines,
Yeah, that's a sign to get out of there
that's a sign to get out of there.
as quickly as possible.
And if you do find yourself trapped,
Stay calm. Don't push against police lines. And be prepared for a long wait or even arrest.
wow.
It's important not to escalate the situation or make any sudden movements that could be misconstrued as a threat.
Okay. Stay calm, observe, try to document what's happening. What about those dispersal orders?
Yeah.
Are there any signs we should be watching for that would tell us that a dispersal order is imminent?
Pay attention to changes in police posture. If they start putting on riot gear,
Cool.
foaming lines with shields, or unlocking tear gas canisters,
Okay.
it's a sign that things are about to escalate. If you see those warning signs,
Yeah.
it's time to reassess your risk tolerance and consider leaving.
So it's all about reading the room,
Yes.
paying attention to those cues and knowing when to, exit stage left.
Exactly.
Speaking of exits, it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with potential escape routes.
Yes.
Before the protest. Like,
before you even get there.
Yeah. Like alleys, side streets, open businesses, stuff like that.
Right. You never know when you might need to make a quick and discreet exit.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Protest preparedness is all about
It is.
thinking about those what-if scenarios and having a plan in place.
That's right. It's about minimizing risks and maximizing your ability to stay safe and make your voice heard.
Well, this has been incredibly enlightening, but I'm realizing we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
We still have a lot to cover, from emergency first aid to dealing with counter-protesters to those extreme scenarios that, while rare, we should all be prepared for. I think we need a break to digest all this information. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back soon with part 2 of our deep dive into this protest guide.
Sounds good.
Welcome back. I feel like we just went through protest boot camp in that last segment.
It is a lot to absorb.
Yeah.
But understanding these foundational safety and legal points is crucial before we dive into more nuanced or extreme situations.
Absolutely. Speaking of nuances, this guide points out that protest laws can differ from state to state.
That's right.
Which seems like something you really need to be aware of.
Yes.
Especially if you're traveling to a protest.
Exactly. What's perfectly legal in one state could land you in trouble in another.
Wow.
So you really need to be aware of the local laws.
Okay, I'm all ears.
For example, let's talk about interacting with law enforcement.
Okay.
We already discussed the importance of remaining calm, asking, am I free to go? And asserting your right to remain silent. But there are situations where even those basic interactions can get complicated depending on the state you're in.
Okay. This is the kind of insider knowledge that feels really empowering.
One example is those failure to identify laws that vary from state to state. In some states, if an officer has reasonable suspicion you've committed a crime, they can legally ask for your ID. And refusing to provide it can lead to arrest.
Oh, wow.
In other states, you only have to identify yourself if you've actually been arrested.
So researching the specific laws of the state where you're protesting is super important. It's not enough to just know your general rights.
And remember, laws are constantly changing. So it's always a good idea to check for updates or consult with a legal organization if you're unsure about the specific rules in a particular location.
Solid advice. Let's talk about another situation that can come up during a protest. Interactions with the media. I've always wondered what it's like to be interviewed on the spot. With cameras flashing and reporters shouting questions.
It can be intense.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that you are never obligated to speak to the media.
Really? Even if it's a friendly reporter, just asking for your opinion on the issue.
You have the right to decline any interview. Even if the questions seem harmless. You never know how your words will be edited or used. And even a seemingly innocent comment can be taken out of context.
So it's best to err on the side of caution.
I think so.
And politely decline. What's a good way to handle that?
Keep it simple and direct. You can say something like, I'm not giving interviews right now. Or I'd prefer not to comment. If there's an official spokesperson for the protest, you can direct the reporter to them.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about something that feels a bit more cloak and dagger. Undercover police officers or infiltrators. This guide mentions that they're sometimes present at protests. Which is kind of unsettling.
Yeah, it's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Especially in protests that are deemed high risk or politically sensitive.
So how can we tell if someone's an undercover cop? Or an infiltrator? Trying to, disrupt things. It seems like it would be hard to spot them.
It can be incredibly difficult as these individuals are trained to blend in and gain the trust of protesters. But there are some red flags to watch out for.
Okay, I'm ready to learn how to spot a spy.
Well, it's not quite as dramatic as that. But there are subtle signs. Be wary of anyone who is overly eager to escalate the situation. Encouraging violence or illegal actions.
So someone who's a little too excited about smashing windows. Or spray painting slogans.
Exactly. They might also try to steer conversations towards sensitive topics or try to gather personal information about protesters like names, addresses, or contact details.
So be cautious about who you trust and what information you share. It seems like maintaining a healthy level of skepticism is key.
It is. And if you notice someone behaving suspiciously, Or trying to incite others, alert the protest organizers or marshals, if there are any. They might have more experience in dealing with these kinds of situations.
Good advice. Now let's shift gears and talk about something that's incredibly relevant in today's digital age.
Yes.
Protecting our online privacy.
Right.
Before, during, and after a protest.
Because our digital footprints can reveal a lot about us.
Yeah.
And it's essential to take steps to safeguard our privacy.
Right.
Especially when engaging in activities like protesting that might attract unwanted attention.
Okay. Where do we even begin? There's so much information about online privacy.
Right.
It can be overwhelming.
Let's break it down into manageable steps.
Yeah.
First, be mindful of what you share online, especially on social media. Avoid posting about your plans to attend a protest.
Okay.
As this information could be monitored.
So no excited tweets about heading to the rally.
Right. And if you do post about the protest afterwards, be mindful of what you share.
Yeah.
Avoid posting photos or videos that could identify other protesters without their consent.
So a little digital discretion goes a long way.
It really does. Now let's talk about protecting your devices. We already discussed strong passwords, disabling biometric unlocks on your phone. But there's more you can do.
I'm all ears.
Consider using a VPN or a virtual private network. It encrypts your internet traffic, making it harder for others to track your online activity. It's like putting a disguise on your data.
I like that analogy. So it's an extra layer of protection. What about more extreme measures, like leaving your phone at home altogether?
If you're really concerned about surveillance or the possibility of your phone being confiscated, you might choose to leave it at home and use a disposable camera or a dedicated device for recording video.
Wow.
It depends on your individual risk tolerance and the nature of the protest.
Okay, that makes sense. What about facial recognition technology? It seems like that's becoming more and more prevalent. And I'm a bit creeped out by the idea of being, identified and tracked simply for attending a protest.
It's a valid concern, and it's something we should all be thinking about. One obvious way to counter facial recognition is by wearing a face mask, which helps to obscure your features. But there are other, less obvious tactics you can use.
Like what? I'm curious.
Some activists recommend wearing makeup or accessories that disrupt facial recognition algorithms.
Oh, okay.
Think bold patterns, unusual colors, reflective materials. There are even special glasses and scarves designed to confuse those systems. It's a way to push back against this invasive technology and assert your right to anonymity.
So it's fashion as a form of protest. I love that idea.
Exactly. It's about taking control of your image in a world where surveillance is becoming increasingly pervasive. Now, let's talk about protecting your social media accounts.
Good point.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who are pretty lax about their social media privacy settings. What are some essential steps we should be taking?
First and foremost, make sure your accounts are set to private. Be careful about who you accept as a friend or follower, and review your privacy settings regularly.
Okay.
And if you're really concerned about security, consider using a strong, unique password for each account and enabling two-factor authentication, which adds an extra layer of security.
Okay, so it's about being proactive and taking control of our online presence. What about after the protest? Are there things we can do to clean up our digital trail and minimize our online exposure?
Absolutely. First, go through your social media accounts and delete any posts or photos that could identify you or other protesters. Change your passwords, especially if you've used public Wi-Fi. And clear your browsing history and cookies. It's like erasing your digital footprints.
So a little digital housekeeping is in order. Now let's talk about something that's just as important as physical safety. Mental health. Protests can be emotionally charged.
They can.
And even traumatic experiences. What are some tips for taking care of ourselves mentally and emotionally after a protest?
It's so important to acknowledge those feelings and seek support. If you need it, talk to friends, family, or a therapist who specializes in trauma or social justice issues. And don't feel pressured to jump back into normal life immediately. Take time to process what happened. Practice self-care and allow yourself to feel whatever you're feeling.
Those are all great reminders. It's easy to get caught up in the adrenaline and energy of a protest.
It is.
But it's crucial to acknowledge the emotional toll it can take. And prioritize our mental well-being.
Exactly. And remember, there's strength in vulnerability. Don't be afraid to reach out for support if you need it. There are people who care and resources available to help you cope.
This has been such a valuable conversation. We've covered so much ground, but I'm realizing there's still more to explore, especially when it comes to actually participating in a protest and making sure your voice is heard effectively and safely. Stay tuned for part 3 of our deep dive, where we'll delve into those strategies and more. Okay, we've covered a ton of ground on the legal and safety aspects of protesting.
Yeah.
But now I'm curious about the actual strategies for making sure your voice is heard and your message resonates, especially in a large protest.
Yes.
Where it's easy to get, lost in the crowd.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And it leads us into some more advanced protest tactics that go beyond simply showing up.
Okay, give me the inside scoop. What are some of those next level strategies?
One really effective tactic is forming what are called affinity groups.
Okay, I've heard that term before.
Yeah.
But I'm not entirely sure what it means in the context of a protest. Can you break it down for us?
Think of it this way. An affinity group is like your own mini team within the larger protest.
Okay.
It's a small, self-organized group of people who come together to support each other and carry out specific actions.
So it could be a group of friends who are all going to the protest together?
It could.
Or people who share a specific skill.
Right.
Like first aid or legal knowledge.
Exactly. It's about creating smaller, more manageable units within the larger, potentially chaotic environment of a protest.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like having a built-in support system.
It is.
And a team to work with.
Exactly.
So what are the benefits of forming an affinity group?
They can help with all sorts of things.
Okay.
De-escalating tense situations, providing legal or medical support.
Right.
And even just offering emotional support to each other.
Yeah, I could see how that would be invaluable.
Yeah.
In a stressful and potentially volatile situation like a protest.
That's right.
It's also a way to ensure that everyone in the group is on the same page.
Exactly.
In terms of their goals and
comfort levels and how they'll respond in different situations.
Exactly.
So if you're thinking about going to a protest, forming an affinity group beforehand seems like a really smart move.
I think so.
What are some tips for doing that effectively?
Well, meet up with your group before the protest.
Right.
Talk about your goals and skills.
Right.
And establish clear roles and communication channels.
Okay.
Choose a name or identifier for your group so you can easily find each other in the crowd.
Okay.
And practice some basic de-escalation techniques together.
Gotcha.
So you're prepared to handle tense situations.
Okay, I'm adding form an affinity group.
Good idea.
To my protest prep checklist.
Good.
Now let's talk about those de-escalation tactics you just mentioned.
Right.
I'm assuming this is about preventing situations from getting out of control.
Yes.
And minimizing the risk of, violence or arrest.
Exactly. It's about being proactive and knowing how to respond calmly and effectively to challenging situations. So what are some specific de-escalation techniques that every protester should know?
Well, it starts with being mindful of your own body language and demeanor. Even when you're dealing with someone who's angry or aggressive, try to maintain a calm and respectful tone.
So it's that classic advice.
It is.
Take a deep breath. And don't mirror their anger.
Don't mirror their anger. That's right.
Or aggression.
Yeah. Take a moment to center yourself.
Right.
Use non-threatening body language. And try to engage in dialogue rather than confrontation. Active listening is a powerful tool.
Right.
Even if you completely disagree with the other person's viewpoint, try to hear them out and understand where they're coming from.
It's good advice for any interaction, really, not just protests.
It is.
But I can imagine it's especially challenging in the heat of the moment.
It is.
When emotions are running high.
It is. But remember that your goal is to de-escalate the situation, not to win an argument.
Right.
Sometimes the best response is no response at all. Walk away and disengage.
Yeah.
Now, let's say things start to escalate on a larger scale.
Right.
A standoff between protesters and police, for example. It's helpful to have designated peacekeepers or marshals within the protest who are specifically trained in de-escalation techniques.
Gotcha.
They can help mediate between the two sides and try to prevent violence.
So these are people who are basically tasked with keeping the peace within the protest itself.
That's right.
Okay.
They might wear identifiable vests or hats. And they should be trained in conflict resolution and nonviolent communication.
That sounds like a really valuable role.
It is.
Especially in level hypo.
Yeah.
Or potentially volatile protest.
Exactly.
Speaking of keeping the peace, what about those legal observers we talked about earlier?
Yeah, legal observers are trained volunteers, often from organizations like the National Lawyers Guild, who are there to document police actions or potential rights violations.
So they're like independent witnesses who are there to protect protesters' rights.
Exactly. They usually wear distinctive green hats
And
carry notebooks to record their observations.
so if you see someone in a green hat at a protest, you know they're there to help.
That's right. They're there to help. They're there to document things like arrests, use of force, dispersal orders, and any other police actions
Right.
that might be questionable. Their presence can deter police misconduct
Okay.
and provide valuable evidence if legal action is needed later.
Okay. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
Now let's shift gears and talk about something a little more creative.
Okay.
Those creative actions or demonstrations that this guide mentions.
This is about thinking outside the box and going beyond traditional marches or rallies to capture attention and make a statement.
Okay, I love that. Give me some examples.
Think street theater, art installations, flash mobs, die-ins, or any other form of creative expression that conveys your message in a visually and emotionally impactful way.
So it's about making the protest more engaging.
It is.
And memorable, and perhaps reaching people who might not otherwise pay attention.
Exactly.
Right.
These kinds of actions can be really powerful because they're unexpected, often humorous, and they can help to humanize the issue and make it more relatable.
It's about tapping into the power of art and creativity to amplify your message.
It is.
And it can also help to create a more positive and celebratory atmosphere, which can be really important for maintaining morale and keeping people engaged.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm totally inspired to brainstorm
Good.
some creative protest ideas now.
Good.
Now let's talk about something that's essential for any successful protest.
Communication.
Communication is key, both within the protest itself and in terms of getting your message out to the wider community.
Okay, so what are some tips for effective protest communication?
Well, it starts with planning ahead.
Okay.
Before the protest, establish clear channels of communication within your affinity group and with the larger protest organizers.
So decide how you'll stay in touch.
Exactly.
Group texts, walkie-talkies, designated meeting points, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Make sure everyone knows the plan, has the necessary contact information, and understands how to use the chosen communication methods. During the protest, be mindful of your surroundings. And avoid discussing sensitive information in public.
So no talking about illegal activities or sharing personal details within earshot of others. Especially law enforcement.
Exactly. And if you're using social media, be aware that your posts and messages could be monitored. Use discretion. And if you need to share sensitive information, consider using more secure channels.
Good point. Now, let's talk about engaging with the media.
Okay.
We talked earlier about how to handle those on-the-spot interviews during a protest. But what about proactively reaching out to the media beforehand to try to get your message out there? That's a really smart strategy. And it's something that a lot of protesters overlook.
So how do we go about doing that effectively?
Well, start by identifying key media contacts who cover social justice issues or the specific topic of your protest. This could be reporters, bloggers, or social media influencers who have an audience that aligns with your cause.
So do your research and find the people who are most likely to amplify your message.
And then craft a clear and concise press release that outlines the purpose of the protest, your demands, and any relevant background information. Distribute it to your media contacts a few days before the protest. And follow up with phone calls or emails to make sure they received it. And to answer any questions they might have.
Okay, that's a solid plan. Now, let's talk about something that's crucial for any successful movement. Mobilizing and engaging the community.
It's about building a broad base of support. Turning a one-time event into a catalyst for lasting change.
So it's about thinking beyond the protest itself.
It is.
And creating a movement that continues to grow and gain momentum.
Exactly. Start by connecting with other community groups, organizations, and individuals who share your values and goals.
Build coalitions, form alliances, create a network of support.
The more people you can bring into the fold, the stronger your movement will be.
Makes sense.
And don't underestimate the power of storytelling.
Okay.
Share your personal experiences And encourage others to do the same.
So make it personal.
Yes.
Connect with people on an emotional level.
Exactly. And remember, social media can be a powerful tool for mobilization and outreach. Use it wisely to spread the word, share information, and engage with people who are interested in your cause.
It's all about using those tools strategically.
Yes.
And effectively.
It is.
Now let's talk about something that's often overlooked.
Yeah.
But incredibly important. Post-protest follow-up.
Yeah. It's really important.
Okay, this is something I'm personally guilty of neglecting.
Right.
I get so caught up
It happens.
in the energy of the protest itself.
Yes.
I forget about the importance of keeping the momentum going afterwards.
It's a common mistake, but it's crucial to remember that the work doesn't end when the protest is over.
Right.
In fact, that's often when the real work begins.
So what are some essential post-protest follow-up steps?
Start by thanking everyone who participated.
Okay.
Send out a thank you email, post a message on social media, or even host a debriefing meeting to share experiences and reflect on what worked well and what could be improved.
So it's about maintaining that sense of community.
It is.
And acknowledging everyone's contributions.
Yes, exactly.
And keep people updated.
Yes.
On any progress or developments related to the issue that sparks the protest.
That's right.
Share news articles, action alerts, opportunities to get involved in ongoing campaigns.
Exactly. Keep the lines of communication open and keep people engaged.
And most importantly, continue to organize and advocate for your cause.
That's right.
Attend community meetings. Contact your elected officials.
Yes.
Volunteer with organizations working on the issue.
Right.
And just integrate your activism into your everyday life.
Exactly. So protesting is just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
It's about sustained action, commitment, and making your voice heard in a variety of ways.
And remember, even small actions can make a difference.
They can.
Every phone call, every email, every conversation can contribute to creating a more just and equitable world.
That's right.
This has been such an incredibly informative and empowering deep dive.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise.
You're welcome.
I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of what it means to protest effectively and responsibly.
I hope so.
To all of you listening, we hope you found this deep dive as valuable as we have. Remember, stay safe, stay informed, and never give up the fight for justice.
That's right.